Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending at what time and in which place on this planet you are watching this episode. Welcome to Data Driven Formula One, again, solo episode, but hopefully next time together with Ghana again. And today the idea is to speak about the rise and fall of Parmalat in Formula One. So it is data-driven Formula One, but also a little bit true crime, as we will speak about internal fraud. Also, we may speak about conflict of interest and how modern organization would tackle this with their internal compliance system. So I can combine a little bit my day job with my hobby Formula One, and I hope you enjoy this episode. First of all, by Parmalat, let's say as I started getting interested in Formula One, watching the races, I always saw Parmalat as Niki Lauda famously wore this cap all the time. So it was not the 70s. In fact, we are now in the 1980s as Niki Lauda returned this time to McLaren using his old sponsor. So this is why I originally thought Parmalat must be a company somewhere active in motorsports, selling motorsports equipment or being active in the automotive sector, because honestly, I never saw their products here in the German supermarket. But again, Niki Lauda I saw quite often wearing this cap in TV, because as Austrian, of course, he was a preferred person for interviews, as it was easy to do in German language. So that's why I started getting to know Parmalat, at least as a logo, without knowing in the beginning what they are really doing, which are dairy products. And we will come to this a little bit later. So Parmalat started in the 70s with sponsoring Formula One, as they had been Niki Lauda's personal sponsor starting 1976. And this relation only finished in 2022. In 1978, Parmalat increased its presence in Formula One by becoming the main sponsor of the Brabham team. This business relationship had been active until 1985. Following this, Parmalat partnered with Brazilian driver Pedro Diniz, son of the owners of a Brazilian supermarket chain. And you see here already a relation, producer of dairy products and owners of a supermarket of a very relevant market. But let's go back in time to the 1970s. Again, we already had the relationship Niki Lauda with Parmalat. And you see this on the photo. He was not wearing it that much on the head yet, but you see it on the official Ferrari race suit, which he was wearing, in the very big Parmalat logo. In fact, it was the biggest logo, as you can see on the photo. By the way, this is let's say, an enhanced audio podcast, meaning Ghana and I always try to show you interesting images, photos. So if you are not seeing this on YouTube Music or Spotify, the next time you may look for us on these platforms, as on the audio-only versions, you may lose a little bit seeing the images, of course. So again, 1977, Bernie Ecclestone, owner of the Brabham team at that time, signed a two-time Formula One world champion Niki Lauda from Ferrari through a deal with the Italian dairy company Parmalat that covered the cost of Lauda ending his Ferrari contract and offset his salary with 200,000 British pounds, which Ferrari offered Lauda to stay at their team. Lauda, in general, had a little bit problematic relationship with Enzo Ferrari, as after his infamous fire accident, Ferrari was thinking that he may turned into the cockpit a little bit too early, maybe being selfish, as he still tried to win the 76 Drivers' Championship. but this may have put on risk maybe the champion title for that year. For this, Enzo Ferrari saw Lauda a little bit critic, and the relationship had not been as good as in the early years. So Niki Lauda was motivated to look for other options. Also, I mean, he had sufficient success. He won two drivers' titles with Ferrari, so uh, looking for new tasks also understandable. Bernie Ecclestone, of course, was a great manager, especially regarding finances. So he found with Parmalat a partner who practically paid Niki Lauda's salary. On the other hand, he got practically from Alfa Romeo for free the engines. So he had, let's say, a top package but with the minimum on own investment. Then next year, 1978, Niki Lauda driving for the Brabham Alfa Romeo team. You see Parmalat, main sponsor. You see it quite prominently on the car, back wing, front wing, before the cockpit. All this you see the Parmalat logo, also of course on Niki Lauda's helmet. And that's why, as I said, if you don't know what Parmalat was really doing, you may sort of thought this must be a company really related to cars, racing, whatever. You wouldn't have automatically the idea that they say milk and yogurts, etc. It was a relatively okay season for Lauda, fourth position in the championship, quite okay when you have a new engine in a car. Sixth, John Watson and also Nelson Piquet in some of the races participated, but here without points. 1979, not that great year. The Alfa Romeo engine unfortunately had problems to work until the end of the race, meaning a lot of technical problems, not finishing the races. And with this, Brabham Alfa Romeo only finished the Constructors' Cup on the 8th position, which is, of course, very disappointing. And Niki Lauda personally only on the 14th position. This may be also because he didn't finish the season, but already in some of the last races said, I'm tired. I'm no longer enjoying driving around and around in circles." So the famous quote by Niki Lauda. His teammate Nelson Piquet, 15th position, not much better, and also sometimes in the cockpit have been the Brazilian driver Ricardo Sonino, but without points. You see here some of the few images of the car. Still Parmalat main sponsor and the biggest logo on the Brabham car. With this, we leave a little bit motorsports and come now directly to the Parmalat company. And as you see, photo of its founder, Callisto Tanzi, which founded the company in quite young years. You see, he was born 1938 and he founded Parmalat already in 1968. So you see, he founded in the age of 23 years. Quite interesting. He was from Parma, especially the city of Collecchio. Today, 2024, you would say, what is Witzkid like Tanzi, somebody in his 20s would found maybe some fancy IT startup, but Tanzi, we are speaking here about the 1960s, traditionally from the Parma region, we thought, no, I'm related to what my region is best on, and these are, of course, prosciutto di Parma, but also, of course, all other kind of farmers' products. So he founded a dairy company called Parmalat. And this directly after dropping out of university. Nevertheless, Parmalat had a very good run in the beginning, but then collapsed in 23 with a 14 billion European hole in its accounts. And up to today, this is Europe's biggest bankruptcy. In 28, Tansi was found to have embezzled some 800 million euro from the company and was jailed for fraud. Although he was sentenced to up to 18 years in prison, Tansi served just over 2 years in jail and was later placed under house arrest. So again, he was born 1938 in November 17th in the city of Collecchio, Parma, and then unfortunately died in 2022, also in Parma. He was related to teams to Brabham, Tyrrell, 40, and also later with others, and we will come to this a little bit later. Let's repeat a little bit the Parmalat story. Parmalat, of course, as you may assume, it's a combination of two words. It's Parma, the region, with lactose for dairy products. So it's a dairy and food corporation that is now a subsidiary of the French multinational Lactalis. In fact, due to the bankruptcy, it was acquired by Lactalis. As mentioned, founded by Callisto Tanzi in 1961, Parmalat became the leading global company producing long live milk through ultra-high temperature UHT processing. So again, young persons implementing, adding technology to traditional products, and in this case, the focus was to use ultra-high temperature processing, which should help to find more easily global markets for the local products. The company went then bankrupt in 23 with 14 billion euro hole in its accounts. And as mentioned, up to today, the biggest bankruptcy in Europe. Since 2011, it has been a subsidiary of the French group Lactalis, with more complete control since 2019, which have been a direct effect of the fraud and bankruptcy. Parmalat still today has a global presence with operations in Europe, North America, South America, and South America we will speak a little bit more about, Australia, China, and South Africa. The group specializes on UHT milk and dairy products such as yogurt, cheese, butter, ice cream, etc. As I said, they are globally active, so you may find their products in your local supermarket. Besides this, it also sells fruit juices, this under the name of Lactis, Santal, Malou, and Kir brands. Parmalat operates around the world with nearly 140 product sites and approximately 16,000 employees, and supplied by 5,000 Italian dairy farms. Its shares are listed on the Italian stock exchange. So if you believe in the company, even if it's controlled now by Lactalis, of course, you can also still get your shares and be a co-owner of the company. Then let's talk a little bit about the person, Callisto. And he opened a small pasteurization plant in Parma at the age of 22. So this is the core where Parmalat are starting from. Over the next 2 decades, the company diversified into milk, dairy, beverage, bakery, and other product lines, becoming a multinational corporation. In the 1980s, the company continued to expand, and in 1919, it went public on the Milan Stock Exchange market. During the 1990s, Parmalat further expanded its operation. By April 2022, Parmalat's share price had reached a record, and the company was valued at 3.7 billion euros, employing more than 30,000 people in 30 countries. The company continued to expand, acquiring Parma 2, a travel company. If I remember the 1990s and the late 80s, here the business philosophy was to expand not only internally but also externally with acquiring other companies. And the idea was to reduce the risk for a company and even acquire companies which have a complete different, are active in complete different business activities. That's why it's not that unusual that they acquired a travel company, something which in today's business philosophy you wouldn't do, as now you look more for synergy effects between the different companies, which could be horizontal or vertical. So you have gone away from having these big conglomerates with companies which have no real relation with each other. But again, we are in the 1990s. Also, he acquired a TV station, Odeon TV, as well as owning a football club, the Parma FC. Until today, not that unusual that rich people buy as hobby a sports club, still quite common today. So he did this already in the 1990s, acquiring Parma FC. And also he acquired a Brazilian club, the SA Palmeiras football club from Sao Paulo, which was originally founded by Italian immigrants and in Brazil won various titles. Jump now to 1997. Parmalat expanded into the financial markets, financing several international acquisitions, especially in the Western Hemisphere. And as it was not that unusual in the 1990s, he did this with debts. By 21, many of the new divisions were making losses, and the company's financing shifted largely to the use of derivatives, apparently at least in part intended to hide the extent of losses in debt. So we had the situation that money have been shifted from one account to the other, from the left to right, and this to camouflage the real situation, the real financial situation of the company. Not completely unusual, but of course, this is internal fraud, and we saw here also that internal and external controls had not been effective. In February 23, the financial director Fausto Tonha unexpectedly announced a new bond issue worth 300 million euros, surprising both the markets and its own CEO, Callisto Tanzi. Due to this, we may think that Tanzi himself lost maybe the control of his own company structures, maybe believing a little bit in its own financial propaganda, and again, believing its own ideas instead of really having a close look on the financial sheets. Just an outside assumption. And due to this, Tanzi forced Turner to resign and replaced him with Alberto Ferraris. This Ferraris discovered then that although he was now CFO, he still did not have access to some of the corporate books, which were kept by accounting director Luciano del Soldado. Ferraris began to do some research and suspected that the company's total debt was more than double what was listed on the balance sheet. So he was practically the person who had to overcome all these internal financial constructs which wanted to avoid that somebody understands the whole financial situation. So based on his obligation as CFO and his personal individual involvement into the topic, which of course you must have as CFO. Nevertheless, it was really thanks to him that this situation was discovered. So a discovery of fraud and mismanagement, as I said, having a conglomerate of companies which no real relation each other may look good for the newspapers. It supports the personal ego, also to have football clubs, of course, but it does not make, in most of the cases, economic sense. So this fraud and mismanagement together led to Parmalat's bankruptcy in 23, which was Europe's biggest bankruptcy at the time. Even the Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, I'm sure you've heard about him, changed the Italian bankruptcy laws by decree to allow a company to seek expedited protection from creditors by giving extraordinary powers to a governmental appointed administrator, in Italian commissario. This to protect the company to completely collapse, save the local jobs there, but also, of course, thinking a little bit more macroeconomically, because the completely collapse of Parmalat would have led also other Italian companies also going into bankruptcy, which could have been the small farmers, the suppliers, but also other companies which somehow had been related into the business with Parmalat. The commissario Enrico Bondi was appointed as the curator of Parmalat and stayed as their CEO until the year 2011, meaning until the company was acquired by the French company Lactalis. Tanzi was arrested hours after the company was officially declared insolvent at the end of December and admitted there was an 8 billion euro hole in Parmalat's accounts, but denied any cover-up. So this is something which we can believe or not believe. I mean, there are some points where you may think that he really wasn't aware of the situation. That's why he fired the former CFO. If he had known or not had known, I mean, he was the owner of the company, meaning you are responsible. So you are responsible to have internal controls, and you are responsible that your company is complying with laws and regulations. So if he actively wanted to cover up a fraud, yes or no, doesn't really matter. I mean, he was responsible, and that's why he had to suffer the consequences. The arrest was followed by the arrest of 5 other executives. Then the administration's auditors finally determined that the debts amounted to 14.3 billion euros, almost 8 times the amount initially declared. Quite common. You discover an internal fraud, you have an initial value, and then the investigation continues, and most likely you see that the original problem, which became public, is much bigger than you originally have assumed of. Several of the company's subsidiaries went into bankruptcy, including its operation in Brazil, Argentina, and the United States. And also the same applied for the soccer club in Parma, which of course was also then rescued later, as it still exists. Callisto Tanzi was charged with financial fraud and money laundering after the company's insolvency was declared and an investigation was launched. Parmalat used questionable accounting practices as shifting money from the left to the right, right to the left, and really trying to use all legal and less legal loopholes. And also such as the sale of credit-linked notes to create assets out of thin air. Tanzi admitted to diverting funds from Parmalat to other businesses, including Parmatur, which proved to be a financial disaster. And here may apply something what we call ethical blindness, because you start doing things which you shouldn't do, because based on your best belief, based on your values, you think you have this organization, you feel the responsibility of the organization to prosper, not only for you, but also to save the jobs for the people you like. Of course, you also perceive the risk of losing your own face. So even if you start doing the right thing step by step, you are doing bad things, and doing step by step bad things, it leads you to the bad path. clearly overstepping a legal and ethical red line. And I think this is something, ethical blindness, what we can also see happened to Callisto Tanzi, a risk which companies try, for example, to address in their internal compliance courses. As here, you see, you have a lot of good people, but if the situation gets rough, if they get pushed into very difficult situation, apply different psychological pressures, you make biased decisions, and you not all at the end. Often we may see that you don't do bad things because you're a bad person, but you have you've been pushed into bad situations, left alone, not supported by the organization, and then step by step did the wrong things. So today, we are in the 2020s. This is a topic internal compliance system try to tackle, not only to protect the organization, but also to tackle the single employee. But of course, Tansi was responsible, so this is no excuse at the end. It's an explanation, but no excuse. Tansi was sentenced to 10 years in prison for fraud related to the collapse of the dairy group, while 7 other defendants were acquitted and 8 settled out of court. Parmalat's new leadership launched investigations and sued Bank of America, Deloitte, and Grant Thornton International, the banking and auditing firms that allegedly had perpetrated the provisions management fraud. As I mentioned, internal and the external controls auditor have completely failed. So also here, the external firms are responsible. They are signing off that the financial accounts are correct, that the company is complying with laws and regulations. And maybe they also had their pressures, because if you're an external auditor, you want to be this external auditor again for the same company next year, the year after, etc. So this is a little bit attention on the single auditor, maybe to not look that close as you should be, and maybe look in extreme cases the other way if you think something which look strange. Again, this is an explanation. I am not had been involved in this particular case, but these are the pressures that external auditors have, and that's why they sometimes fail, not only for Parmalat, but we also had, of course, other cases you may have heard of. Grant Thornton International settled with Parmalat for $4.4 million after repeated lawsuits. Good money which Parmalat could use to pay their pending accounts and payments. Parmalat's new management recovered around $700 million in payments from banks and auditing firms that is sued for negligence and aid in fraud by former Parmalat management. So what this says is auditors have been cooperating a little bit too much with the company's management instead of controlling the company's management. What was their task? Quite interesting up to today. If you go to the internet and enter www.parmalat.it, you still can see their old website, which was last time uploaded 2019. So really, you can, if you want, stop this video, go to Google or do it on your second screen. If you go there, and this is an Italian domain, but nevertheless the page is in English. And normally what you see, if companies have been involved in a bigger corporate scandal, their corporate website includes a lot of information, what they have now implemented additionally to ensure now compliance with law and regulations. So if you go to this website, to corporate governance, you see a lot of activities which had been executed to ensure that now Parmalat was complying with the Italian laws and regulations. If you're interested in the actual Parmalat web page, then you have to go to parmalat.com. So there you see the completely actual website. This is a little bit interesting historic document. I don't know why they still have it online. Nevertheless, if you're interested in business history, interesting to see, of course. And let's say with this, we jump back into Formula One. Now we are in the year 1918, so still before the scandal. Niki Lauda left the team. Nevertheless, Parmalat stayed related to Brabham and staying their main sponsor. Now the number one driver had been Nelson Piquet. In fact, it was a good year for the team. Third position in the constructors title, and Nelson Piquet on the second position, while the other driver, the Mexican Hector Rebaque, only came on position 21. So you see here also a little bit the team strategy. Yes, they had two drivers because I think in the 80s you had to have two drivers, but the number two had been like a paid drivers, not having the same material as the number one, and not having the preferred strategy. So that's why we can explain why there have been the big gap between Nelson Piquet and Hector Rebaque. Of course, also you may say related to the individual talent, but it was not only a gap in talent. I'm sure Hector Rebaque never had the same material as Nelson Piquet. 81, still good for the Parmalat Brabham team. Second in Constructors' Cup. And by the way, I think I cannot see it, but I think this was already with the BMW. Yes, I'm sure it was the BMW turbo engine. It's not the Alfa Romeo engine anymore. So here we see a second position in the constructors title, and Nelson Piquet won the drivers championship. Second, still Hector Rebaque, the Mexican driver. If you see the image, you see main sponsor still Italian Parmalat, but you see on the left the smaller logos behind the driver on the back wing. Pemex, this is the Mexican petroleum company. So we may assume that Hector Rebaque brought a lot of money into the team, and that's the reason why he had been on the second position, being the paid driver, also required to pay the higher salary for Nelson Piquet. Then we are now 1982, and as I've mentioned in the beginning, that's when I started to get interested in Formula One, watching the races. Niki Lauda returned to Formula One and driving for the McLaren Honda team. But even if Parmalat not had been sponsor of the team, McLaren, he kept Parmalat as the personal sponsor. That's why we remember him always with the Parmalat cap on. And on the Constructors' Cup for the Parmalat Brabham team, not that good year. Seventh in the Constructors' Cup. Brabham was always quite unstable, meaning sometimes they had a great car, a great package. Sometimes they've been really at the end of the teams on the list, and this time only seventh for constructors. For the drivers, even worse. 10th position for Riccardo Patrese, the Italian driver, and maybe you assume also supported by the Italian Parmalat company. And 11th position only for the number one Nelson Piquet, the the BMW turbo engine, very fast. But I remember seeing this car also with a lot of fire, finishing early the races, as the turbo engines in the beginning of the 80s really had not been reliable. 83, the Brabham team, officially known now as Fila Sport. Fila, a supporter of sports clothes, and still the BMW engine. Nevertheless, results quite changing. Constructors' Cup 7th, but another title for Nelson Piquet, a ninth position of Ricardo Patrese. So again, quite a one-man show related to drivers. 84 now officially called MRD International, but it's still with the Parmalat being the main sponsor. Fourth in the Constructors' Cup, fifth position for Nelson Piquet, and 12th Italian driver Theo Fabi. Theo Fabi also supported by Parmalat, meaning supported by the money of Parmalat. Quite interesting fun fact, sometimes he had been replaced, or Piquet had been replaced, I'm not completely sure, by Corrado Fabi, which was Theo's brother, and also once German driver Manfred Winkelhock had the opportunity to drive this Parmalat, this Brabham. On the other hand, 84, Niki Lauda's third championship, still with the personal sponsor Parmalat, and this, of course, with the McLaren MP42, as you see here on the photo. So even if for Parmalat, the Brabham team was not that successful, very successful year, thanks to the personal sponsorship of Niki Lauda. Then next year, Parmalat left the sports. So a year without Parmalat in Formula One, you wouldn't have noticed this on the first look, as the colors for Brabham stayed the same, and they even continued with an Italian sponsor, Olivetti, which colors the same as Parmalat, dark blue. So really the design stayed the same. So you just have to see that Parmalat was not the main sponsor anymore, even if they, I think, as you can see on the back wing, with some of their other brands, they stayed related to the Brabham team. Now, let's have a jump in the middle of the 90s, and we see now Parmalat's relation with the very small Italian team 40 using a Ford Cosworth engine. Parmalat returned to Formula One in 95 with the 40 team, thanks to its connections with the CBC distribution company and the Pão de Açúcar, sugar leaf in English, supermarket chain, both of which were owned by the Diniz family. So here we are speaking about the Brazilian market, where Pão de Açúcar, for the ones who had the opportunity to visit Brazil, know is the leading supermarket in Brazil. So you see them everywhere from north to south, and owned by the Diniz family. And one of their sons, Pedro Diniz, had been active in motorsports, and also thanks to this financial backing, which you need sometimes to enter Formula One, entered Formula One. And to be very clear with you, Pedro Diniz in Formula One always had been a paid driver, strongly supported by Parmalat, but this does not mean that he was a bad driver. He was not an Ayrton Senna, not a Nelson Piquet, but he was a quite okay driver. He had the talent, so it was not, let's say, unjustified that he drove a Formula One car. You may say that other drivers had the talent the same as Diniz, but not had his financial backing, so which not entered Formula One. But Pedro Diniz, I said, he had the financial options, but he also had the talent to drive a Formula One car. So Pedro Diniz drove the 95 Parmalat 40 Ford. You see here the photo. In fact, this is the Roberto Moreno car, the number one driver for 40, mainly yellow, but with the Parmalat logo. And I think it's a little bit adapted logo, as normally Parmalat is white font on dark blue, but here they have it yellow to match the colors of the car. And also you see the big focus on the Brazilian market, as its other sponsors include Kaiser, which is German for emperor, but nevertheless Kaiser is a Brazilian beer brand. So you see the car really should apply for the Brazilian fans. They had a Brazilian driver supported by the Pão de Açúcar supermarket, even though you don't see Pão de Açúcar as a sponsor for the team, but Parmalat as the Italian dairy company. And here you may think a little bit about conflict of interest. It may look a little bit fishy that one of your biggest providers of your company is a main sponsor of the son or the daughter of key employee, including owner, because it may have an influence on decision making. If it's a family company like Par de Azúcar, we can be 100% sure that this had a positive influence for Parmalat on the decision making, having their products in the supermarket there. But of course, you may say the procurement department, they had, of course, a pressure to choose from whom to source. Maybe there had been other even local Brazilian brands without the financial opportunities to help the son of your owner to be in a Formula One team. And so maybe here Parmalat, the procurement department, had a pressure to decide for the Italian product instead of supporting other brands, even local brands, even if they would have been the same or better quality or the same or better prices for you. Again, we are here in the 1990s, still 10 years before we have big corruption scandals in big global companies. So in the 90s, we still not had sophisticated internal controls, internal processes. Today, most companies have internal policies related conflict of interest, and seeing a big provider sponsoring the Formula One career of your owner or another key employee who has the influence to decide relevant decisions for the company would be a clear red flag. So you have this, of course, in your own company, but also on the provider side, in this case, Parmalat, you would have this conflict of interest or compliance regulations, which would not allow you anymore to sponsor the son of a key decision maker of your customer's company. So this is something which honestly has changed the last 20 years. So I think today this construct, even if it's not a deviation to law, would not be possible anymore. Okay, so Pedro Diniz, 95, active for 44th, very small team. Due to this, none of the drivers, not Diniz, not the number one, Roberto Moreno, had the opportunity to get any points. And due to this, Diniz left 40 as he got the opportunity to drive for the much bigger team, Ligier. Ligier, very famous team, even to be honest, in the 90s, had not been such a big successful team as they had been, for example, in the 1970s, where they even had been able to win championships. In the 1990s, Ligier was somewhere in midfield, lower midfield. Nevertheless, they achieved, together with Pamela, sponsoring the 6th position. And by the way, here you see Pamela again in dark blue with white, so their traditional colors. Their number one driver, French Olivier Panis, ninth position, and Pedro Diniz, 15th position. And again, I want to underline that Pedro Diniz, yes, was a paid driver, but yes, he also had talent, so it was justified that he could compete in Formula One. Reportedly, Parmalat paid 10 million British pounds for sponsoring, and of course, this together with requesting that the second seat in the team would go to their driver, Pedro Diniz. Then Diniz left to Arrows, where Arrows got the Yamaha engine from Zakspeed. For 97, they had a big clue. They could get the reigning Formula One champion, Damon Hill, as Damon Hill, coming from Williams, lost his seat as Williams and honestly was not able to find a place in a top team. So you may say Arrows had been his only options if he wanted or not wanted. But of course, for Arrows, it was the one big thing which they could reach because they had not been a big team. They never had been a big team somewhere midfield until lower midfield. So having the reigning championship, of course, the reigning champion was, of course, a big thing for the team and quite expensive. And to achieve this, being able to pay the salary for Damon Hill, they had to get the sponsorship from Parmalat, which have been reportedly around 12 million British pounds. With this, they paid Hill's salary, and with this, of course, they had the right to tell Yamaha, Aros Yamaha, to take Pedro Diniz as the second driver. So again, Diniz, the paid driver, but he also was quite doing okay, getting even into the points, which helped him to achieve the 16th position in the championship, only 4th position lower than the reigning champion and number one driver, Damon Hill. And again, the second driver, I assume, didn't have the same material as the number one, especially if you are in a smaller team as Arrows at that time. Then again, time for Diniz to change. Now we are in 1999. Together with Parmalat, he joined Red Bull, Sauber. Sauber at that time with the Red Bull sponsorship. And quite funny, well, the Sauber with the Petronas engine was a highly unreliable car. So the number one driver, of course, was French Jean Alesi, but Alesi practically never saw the finishing line. And this led to the fact that the Sauber only became 8th in the Constructors' Championship, but also that the better placed driver had been Pedro Diniz, position 14th, while Jean Alesi only became on position 15. Due to our information, Parmalat paid for this sponsorship around 10 million British pounds. And again, with this requesting Pedro Diniz to drive the second of the Sauber. So you see, really, Pedro Diniz was completely linked to Parmalat. And of course, again, you may ask yourself why Parmalat is sponsoring a Brazilian driver, which, yes, had talent, but he was not a super talent. So why they stick with the Brazilian driver and maybe not use their money for a more local driver or any other driver? And you may say, or you may think that this is related to business, as this should ensure the good positioning of Parmalat products into these Brazilian Pão de Açúcar supermarkets. So here, sponsorship, sports supported the business, which is again not a violation of Brazilian or Italian law. It's no violation because Pão de Açúcar is a private company. If it would be a governmental company, of course, this would have been a violation of anti-corruption laws. But again, a family company and the owner can decide for whatever reason which products they want to sell, Parmalat or no Parmalat, up to the Diniz family. No violation of Brazilian law, even though it may looks a little bit fishy. And I repeat, based on the efficient compliance programs which we have in such big companies today, would not be possible, I assume. At least not in Latin America or European companies. Yeah, now, new millennium, 2000, Pedro Diniz stayed at Sauber, but this was really a year to forget. No points for the Brazilian. Also Sauber, only 8 in the championship. The number 1 driver, Mika Salo, very fast Finnish driver, only on position 11. That's nearly the end, but let's see how the story continued for the various players. Pedro Diniz could not secure a seat at Sauber or the Prost team for the next season. Or in general, Parmalat, Diniz family negotiated with the Prost team to have the second seat for Pedro Diniz. Didn't work out. Nevertheless, Prost had been struggling, and the Diniz family acquired for $10 million 40% of the French team. Pedro took on a consulting role for the team. So I've been active as an advisor, but not as a driver anymore. Not even as a test driver, but really a white-collar job being a consultant. There had been rumors that Pedro Diniz, together with Parmalat, also had been in negotiation with the new British-American racing team to secure a seat here for the 2001 championship. But Bar decided against Diniz as a driver. Instead, they got Jacques Villeneuve, who was really strongly involved in the team. And the second seat went to Oliver Panis. So they had practically not a direct paid driver. Yes, they had a number 1, Jacques Villeneuve, but also Olivier Panis was a very fast driver. So who was not dependent on buying in his seat into the team. At the end of 2021, the Diniz family had been in negotiation to acquire the remaining stake of the Prost team, but also here their offer was declined, and as a result of this, Pedro Diniz formally left the Prost team. 1 year later, 2002, Parmalat, based on its financial difficulties, after 26 years, also entered the sponsorship of Niki Lauda. So it was no problems personally between both Lauda and Parmalat, but it was just really related to the financial struggling that, of course, in such situations, you stop sponsorships, as normally this is one of the first places where you want to save money. I remember, for example, completely unrelated to the Parmalat case, Siemens had been a main sponsor, also supporting the Mercedes comeback into Formula One. And also, as they had their bigger compliance cases as a result of these compliance topics, and that the company needed a lot of money for internal restructuring and paying external fines, they stopped the Formula One sponsorships. 2006, as a fun fact, Enrico Bondi, el comisario, born 1934, so you can calculate how old he was at that time, became chairman of Parma FC. So here some ways crossed again. And that's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed our focus on Parmalat in Formula One. As I said, this time a little bit true crime podcast. I mean, quite in fashion. So you hope may have enjoyed this crossover. And if you enjoyed, please like it. And you can see us, you can follow us on YouTube, YouTube Music, and of course Spotify for video. If you want to listen only, maybe you're driving or whatever reason, you just have the possibility to listen. In the moment, we are practically on all podcast platforms. If you are into music, I recommend here our Spotify data-driven F1 mixtape. A lot of songs which are inspired by drivers, inspired by Formula One. Real interesting mixture, so give it a try. With this, until the next time, and hope to see you then, and maybe again with Ghana, we will see. Thank you. Bye bye.